This is the heartbreaking murder of Corey Desmond. From a cheerful bartender to dead meat in the trash bag, how can sex make you do the unthinkable? This is Unsolved Files, a place where crime stories are being brought to your doorstep. What are you waiting for? Just hit the subscribe button for more fascinating and suspense-filled crime stories. Now let's get back into this story and uncover this. At Torrance Memorial Hospital, Corey Day Desmond was born on March 18, 1980. And from the moment of her birth, she attracted attention due to her survival struggles. She needed many surgeries because of a hole in her diaphragm. Even though her odds of surviving were barely 20%, she amazingly not only lived, but thrived. Desmond's friends and family, on the other hand, knew her as a bright, self-assured young woman who was not shy about voicing her opinions. She was also vibrant and filled with love for the people in her life. Meanwhile, Desmond completed her studies at North Torrance High School and Long Beach State to obtain a master's degree in criminal justice. She changed her mind and chose to become a teacher because she wasn't sure what her calling in life was. Her mission was to instruct kids with autism. A week before her death, she received a notice in the mail stating she had gotten her teaching certificate. She was a friend to everyone and adored by many. She could be hard as nails, but she could also be compassionate at times. Corey was employed at a bar in 2009. She worked a shift on Saturday, February 14th, which concluded at 9:30 p.m. After that, she strolled 2 blocks away from Street Lounge, a well-known pub. Corey had friends who worked at this bar, so many of the staff knew her. Apparently, it appears that she was seen on security cameras assisting others at the bar. She, however, left the pub immediately after it closed, which was at around 2 a.m., and that was the last time her friends ever saw her. At 2:20 p.m. on Monday, February 16th, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office received a horrifying call. A driver pulled over to remove the snow chains from the wheels, around 100 miles from the pub where people had last seen Corey. As soon as he got out of the car, the man noticed a strong, awful smell. Even though he believed the source of the stench to be an animal struck by a car, he decided to investigate. There was something odd he discovered not far from the car. The man was in a panic when he discovered a black plastic waste bag containing a woman's body. He stopped cars and requested that the police be called because his phone's battery was dead. Still, they were able to identify the victim by her driver's license and fingerprints. The 28-year-old lady, who happens to be Corey Day Desmond, was the victim of a vicious attack. She was strangled to death. She sustained injuries to the back of her head in addition to several bruises on her face and neck. Meanwhile, during the attack, Corey attempted to defend herself by trying to fight back. Medical specialists stated that Corey was out on the street for roughly 12 to 36 hours when the driver found her, despite not being able to pinpoint the exact time of her death. Although Corey's pants were dragged down to her knees and loosened, there was no evidence of any sexual contact. The first conclusion the investigators came up with was that Corey had not yet passed away when the driver discovered her body. In the hopes that it would take some time to find it, the criminal abandoned her body by the side of the road. Before the driver discovered her body, the rain had destroyed all available evidence. Reporting this awful news to the relatives of the deceased or missing is probably the hardest part of a police officer's job. The discovery of her granddaughter's body in a trash bag horrified Corey's grandmother, who was living with her at the time, and devastated Corey's father, Mark. Mark was fully aware of how the system operated. Because they require a warrant to perform searches, questioning, and fingerprinting, the police have occasionally put off their investigations for several months, and there were times when the laborious bureaucracy caused a delay in the investigation of a crime. As a result, Mark decided to take action rather than wait for the authorities to track down the person who had taken his daughter's life. He claimed that his love for his daughter gave him the willpower to pursue the perpetrator. Eventually, Corey's Jeep Wrangler was located by Mark in an alleyway close to the bar where she works. Additionally, he learned that Corey vanished on the evening of February 15th, but sadly, no one was aware of it. Grandma didn't panic because Corey had grown into an adult and could spend the night with friends. She also frequently worked through the night, returning home to find that her grandma had already fallen asleep. To locate potential witnesses or leads, investigators went to the pub where Desmond works. They found out from other staff members that Corey often left her shift at 9:30 p.m. to go to another pub. Corey's friends worked at that pub, and she would regularly go see them after work. In addition to earning more tips, she assisted at the bar and spoke with friends while seated at the counter. In other words, numerous customers at the bar recognized Corey's face and thought she was just another employee. Surveillance footage that showed Corey helping her friends at the pub corroborated the customers' claims. Regretfully, a bartender's duties extend beyond serving beverages and amusing customers. Occasionally, Alcohol consumption causes certain people to lose control over their emotions, leading to unacceptable behavior. That evening, Corey was unfortunate enough to cross paths with such a person. Eyewitnesses claimed that she got into an argument with a man for acting provocatively. He disturbed women, caressed them in an indiscreet manner, and paid them offensive compliments. Corey stood up for the customers of the pub, essentially telling the man that he was not wanted there, while everyone else remained silent and dared not challenge him. Despite being quite angry, the aggressive visitor agreed to leave the premises. As if nothing had happened, Corey kept helping her friends and waited on them at the bar. She drank that evening, but that did not affect how she behaved. She left the bar alone after 2 a.m. to return home, but as of right now, her body was discovered dead the next day, 100 miles from the bar. Mark provided all the information he could gather to the police. He called on everyone to disclose any vital information for the investigation via the media and television. The authorities knew of the man Corey had a fight with before she passed away. In an interview with detectives, the man said he had no idea who Corey Desmond was, but he did not deny the fact that he and the girl got into a heated argument in a bar on February 14th. The man confirmed that they had to kick him out of the bar because alcohol made him uncontrollable. He then went home to sleep. Despite his denial of any involvement in the incident, the suspect consented to a polygraph examination and allowed the police to examine his home and vehicle. They looked closely at the suspect's vehicle because they might find evidence of hair, bloodstains, or Corey's belongings. Despite the car's exterior and interior being filthy, forensic specialists were unable to locate any proof. Nothing pointing to the man's involvement in the incident was discovered during their search at his house. The polygraph exam was the last resort for the investigators to determine if the man was telling the truth or not, but he breezed through it and provided all the information they needed to answer. Furthermore, his wife attests that he arrived home before 2 a.m. and promptly retired to bed. The issue was that they had no other persons of interest in this investigation. Corey left the pub at around 2 a.m, indicating that the man was not involved in her death and was therefore taken off the list of suspects by the police. With no suspect in mind, who actually killed Corey? Or was she killed by a wild animal? But how possible is that? They investigated Corey's private life to see whether she had any rivals who could have harmed her. And with this, investigators discovered another odd detail. The owner of the pub where Corey worked said that the girl came in that night and asked to use the restroom, but he turned her down because the bar was closed and told her to go home. It was around 2:20 before dawn. The events that followed are still unknown because Corey never got into the car or left for home. The assumption made by investigators was that she had been kidnapped or beaten close to her workplace. However, neither the surveillance footage from the bar nor the presence of witnesses on the street at this late hour supported this explanation. At the time of her death, it was unclear if Corey intended to use her car or was looking for another means of transportation home because her blood alcohol content was more than 4 times the legal limit. Sadly, she didn't run into anyone who could assist her that evening. After a month, the police investigated every version and clue and uncovered no new suspects, but the investigation had come to a dead end. Mark, Corey's father, had no intention of giving up. On Redondo Beach's Aria Boulevard, he rented 3 billboards. However, the billboards included an image of his daughter and the question, who killed Corey Day Desmond? The man promised to pay $15,000 for any information that might help the authorities. Mark Desmond stated, "I'm going to keep them up there to let people know the guy is still out there." Additionally, Corey's story was occasionally displayed on 50 electronic billboards, all of which produced results. One of the billboards featuring Corey's picture caught Tiffany's attention, and the police were called in May 2009. The authorities were able to solve this case because of this woman. Tiffany finally spoke very gently. The woman was incredibly scared and stressed out. "Hello, my name is Tiffany, and I think my boyfriend, Tony Lopez Perez, killed that bartender girl, Corey Day Desmond," she blurted out, seeming unsure of where to begin. "He's acting suspiciously, so please examine him. I'll tell you more when we meet." Tiffany gave the detective multiple calls in an attempt to set up a meeting. During their conversation in the park, the woman revealed her suspicions. She claimed that she and Tony had arranged a romantic Valentine's Day dinner for February 14th. She prepared for a date all evening long. Tiffany got a new red dress, went to a beauty salon, and took the kids to their grandparents. Tony was a big fan of her red outfits. It drove him insane. He was working that day, but had to go home at 11:30 p.m. Tiffany spent nearly the whole night waiting for Tony. He did not return calls or messages when she attempted to reach him. Tony claimed he was too drunk to drive home and that he had fallen asleep in his car when he finally made it back home at 4:30 in the morning, acting as if nothing had happened. Tiffany stated that Tony didn't usually keep his car's interior tidy. However, a few days later, he purchased an entire package of cleaning supplies and completely cleaned the car on his own without her assistance. She thought the guy was acting strangely, but she didn't give it much thought at the time. A few days later, Tony acquired a new car and sold his white Dodge for nearly nothing. They went on a family vacation to Big Bear Lake after he changed his phone number for no apparent reason. They chatted along the drive, and everything looked normal until Tony abruptly pulled over on the side of the road. "Do you think this dead girl, what was her name, the bartender, was dumped here?" He looked at Tiffany. "I'm almost certain that the police found her body here. Tony Lopez Perez and Tiffany never got married, but they did live together for almost 4 years and have a 6-year-old son. He was a devoted worker who got along with everyone. He had no encounters with the law." With 8 siblings, Perez hailed from a large family. His parents lived in the Los Angeles region, and he completed his high school education in Manhattan Beach. Tiffany concluded that Tony might have killed Corey Desmond after putting all the evidence together, including Tony's sudden disappearance on the day of Corey's death, the cleaning and hasty sale of the car, an odd trip, an equally strange remark about where the police found Corey's body, a change of phone number, and strange behavior. But she didn't want to accept it. The investigators decided to speak with Tony, so they went to his house. Tiffany consented to cooperate with the authorities and keep this conversation a secret from him to avoid raising any suspicions. It appeared as though they were interviewing people routinely to locate witnesses for Corey Desmond's case. Tony had a serene appearance, as if he had nothing to conceal. He answered all the questions without showing any signs of nervousness, stating that he had only seen Corey in newspapers and that he didn't know her. Nevertheless, they need concrete proof before they can detain Tony Lopez Perez for killing Corey. As a result, the police identified the new owner of the Dodge that Tony sold shortly after Corey's death. According to the new owner, Tony sold the car to him at cheaper rates. He gave the police permission to search the car for any evidence. Before selling his car, Tony, according to Tiffany, carefully cleaned the interior. But when the professionals used an ultraviolet lamp and luminol, it was clear why Tony Lopez Perez sold his car. The inside burst into a brilliant blue glow. Nevertheless, the police summoned Tony to the police station, but they did not inform him of the findings to prevent him from escaping. He initially stated he had never seen Corey, but he later adjusted his statement to include his claim that he saw her close to the bar and whistled at her. The police showed the man pictures of the automobile he had sold and claimed to have uncovered important evidence there as soon as they realized the man was changing his story. This time, Tony said he saw Corey standing beneath a street lamp outside the bar. He attempted to assist her after she abruptly lost consciousness and fell on the sidewalk, but she was unable to regain consciousness. When he continued to slap Corey's cheeks, she opened her eyes and began to scream. She requested that he release her and told him to leave. Tony claims that he became frightened, covered her mouth with his hands, and unintentionally strangled her. He put Corey's body in the back seat of his car and drove home, terrified that he would be held responsible for her death. "How can you accidentally kill someone? That's absurd." Perez stated that he walked outside when he woke up in the middle of the night to see if it was a nightmare. "Of course not, bro. You killed her." Perez said he returned inside and made an effort to go to sleep. With Desmond's body still in the back seat, he drove to work in the morning. When the workday came to a close, he grabbed her body, wrapped it up in 2 trash bags, and deposited it by the side of the road in a distant location. Tony claimed that he accidentally strangled Corey in a panic because he was afraid and intoxicated, but Corey's injuries proved otherwise. Tony claimed that what he did to her was an accident, in addition to having defense wounds on her hands, bruises on her face and neck, and serious injuries on the back of her head. Corey's pants were down to her knees. Tony Perez was taken into custody and accused of first-degree life deprivation. He revealed to the police where he had discarded Corey's body the following day. They now had DNA test results in addition to Tony's confession, and Corey's blood matched the blood found in the car that Tony sold right after the crime. In 2011, coroner Jack Sheridan provided testimony regarding the victim's many skull contusions, strangling evidence, and blunt force injuries to her face. Sheridan added that scratches on her body might indicate that the culprit had dragged her after she died. Prosecutors said that Corey suffered injuries during an assault, and that the culprit tried to force her into a sexual encounter on February 15, 2009, and when Corey refused to comply, he was unable to get his way, so he strangled her. Tiffany testified throughout the trial, telling the San Bernardino County jury that in January and February of 2009, her ex-boyfriend Tony Lopez Perez had an obsessive craving for sex. Tiffany claimed that despite their nearly daily sexual encounters, Perez was still unsatisfied. However, Tiffany also testified in court that Tony had forced her into sexual activity twice. It happened after their baby was born, and about a month later, both incidents happened while she was dozing off on the couch after taking medications for acute back pain. Perez said he was taught to love and respect people around him, but that he occasionally diverted from the path. "I forgot the key lessons I was taught about in life, which makes me a man, a father, and a loving uncle to many, and a responsible person who supports his family, which I so love," he said, adding that in the end, "I fell short." Perez declined to testify during the trial. In general, he accepted the explanation given by his attorney, Andrew Hanel, during the trial, that he was afraid and didn't mean to harm Desmond. To a jury consisting of 6 men and 6 women, Hanel contended that Perez discovered her unconscious on the pavement. He said he wasn't trying to kill her, and had instead tried to calm her down. Perez remarked, "I should have cleared my head and taken a step back before acting out of fear. I was reckless and incredibly afraid." Before her life was taken at the age of 28, Corey's father, Mark Desmond, stated that his daughter had a bright future ahead of her. According to her father, Tony Perez should spend the rest of his unhappy life knowing that he destroyed Corey and his own children's ambitions and goals at the same time. He represents all the traits that women in society are afraid of. Perez begged God in court to show him mercy right before he was sentenced. "I sincerely apologize to the Desmond family for causing them pain and suffering that will always be a part of their lives. I also sincerely apologize to my own family." A jury found 36-year-old Tony Lopez Perez guilty of first-degree deprivation of life in July 2011. He received a life sentence with the possibility of release after 25 years. The family of Corey Desmond also thanked Tiffany, saying that without her, the police wouldn't have any slight idea of who killed Corey. To some extent, this story is similar to the case of Samantha Josephson, in which her boyfriend did everything to find the killer. If you haven't watched this story yet, just click on the video on your screen. See you in our next video.